Yo, what is going on, guys? This is Steven, aka the Poke Technician, back here bringing you another video. And today I am joined by a very special friend. Please welcome to the channel, Scott.
Hey, it's nice to be here. Thanks for having us on, Steven.
Yeah, man, I'm very glad to have you on today. We are going to be having a lot of fun going through all the different teams in our draft league, the DLC here, and giving them their power rankings. Yeah, so basically what we'll do is we'll go team by team. You can see them along the bottom here. And we'll take you to the sheet, show you their team, and give you some in-depth analysis on what we think about how strong their team is and how well they'll be doing this season. What do you think, Scott?
I think there's a big mix. Like I was talking to you before, it's like I think there's a lot of teams kind of in that mid-range area, but there's one or two teams which have pulled ahead quite early on, I think, just on paper. So it's not clear-cut at all.
No, there's definitely a high level of competition here. I'm always hesitant to give out S ranks, but I do have a couple S ranks in this, at least for myself. But we'll kind of balance out our rankings and decide where the best spot to put these teams are. So.
Yeah, I think it like you said, it's one of definitely the highest standard for teams that have been drafted. I think I've seen for quite a while, actually.
Yeah, definitely a lot of big threats. This is Natdex, so you know everything's accessible. There's of course some restrictions to the Ubers, but yeah, definitely some really powerful mons in this format. And I'm excited to see what everyone was able to pick up and how they make use of it. So I guess without any further ado, we can get right into things. And I believe the first team on this list is going to be your team, the Kalos Kings.
Yeah. So I mean, we hit really lucky. We had seat 1, so we got first pick up the whole lot and ended up with Mega Lopunny in that. I think you'll agree, probably best Mega in the format there.
Yeah, definitely. Everybody's always shooting for that Mega Lopunny pick at the very first spot. Just a dangerous mon with its insane physical attack and scrappy ability, just hits everything.
Yeah. Absolutely, and it actually does have some relatively okay coverage moves as well. But I mean, it is still a bit of a glass cannon if you don't use it right. So it's not just a case of where, like, when I've been in draft leagues where you've had the likes of Mega Metagross where you can just pick it and win. So you do still have to build around it, which I think we've kind of done okay. We've got things like we managed to scoop up Tapu Lele and Hydreigon to kind of build a pretty solid core of stronger mons there, but I mean, as you go through, we do have a lot of bases covered, and I think we have managed to make it relatively well-rounded team there. There's a few very versatile options we do have in the lower tiers as well, like Gligar's in there. And my teammate actually, because it's obviously team format as well, Joe, who was with me, actually convinced me with a couple of them with Rapidash and Spiritomb.
Great pick.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've never used Spiritomb before, but in testing for week 1, it's absolutely impressed me, and like I'm converted. I'm converted.
Yeah, looking up and down your team, I'm just seeing a lot of really, really scary offensive threats here. Paired with Mega Lopunny, obviously Tapu Lele needs no introduction. It's just an absolute monster. Aegislash can go special, physical. It can, stall opponents out. Shaman, just a strong all around the board, hundreds across the board mon in its own right. And Gligar, I love the Gligar pick. I mean, it can be relatively defensive, gets knockoff, nice rocker. Looks like pretty much your main defogger, along with Rotom probably. So. Nice utility.
Yeah, I mean, there is also options in there because Hydreigon can take defog as well, so there is options there if you really wanted to go defog and 3 attacks. So we're not kind of just tied in with those two as well, but obviously that's last resort.
Right.
And there's also, like, obviously, because you missed out there, there's obviously Lycanroc as well on the rock side as well. It's pretty good offensive rock setter there in as well.
Definitely, yeah, good lead rocker, good sash rocker. Definitely some options there. Now, we'll get into what we ranked this team in just a moment, but I do have one little maybe potential flaw I wanted to point out before we move any further. and this was also brought up to me from some of the admin team, and I had thought about it. What is your thought? What was your thought when you drafted Tapu Lele? Was it just like, oh, this is like the most powerful thing on the board, or what exactly was going through your mind?
So, actually, our initial we never planned for getting near the top in the picks initially. And what we'd actually initially planned was Mega Gardevoir. And we built the team around a core of the likes of Mega Gardevoir, and Hydreigon was in that core as well. So when we ended up in Seat 1, we're like, well, we've got to take Mega Lopunny. We take that, and then we work out the rest. And Tapu Lele was kind of the next logical step with the same typings, and it can fill a bit of a similar role. So that was kind of the logical pick to take, so we didn't like start from scratch with working out what we wanted.
I see, yeah. Makes sense, same typing, better speed, even better, better offensive stats, really, honestly, than Mega. It doesn't Gardevoir. I don't know about Mega Gardevoir necessarily, but
yeah.
If you can get a Mon that's not a Mega that basically matches what you have in a Mega, why not go for it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the one drawback I'm seeing from having Tapu Lele on your squad is the potential to actually mess yourself up with the terrain.
Yes.
Because we all know the funny thing about Mega Lopunny is that Tapu Lele is an amazing Mega Lopunny check. So the fact that you were able to take that away from everybody else in terms of being able to check your Mega Lopunny is awesome, but you don't want to hinder your own fake outs, quick attacks, extreme speeds with Linoon, sucker punches, shadow sneaks with Spiritomb, shadow sneaks with Aegislash. You've got a lot of priority here. Lycanroc, Accelerock,
Yeah.
Something you're going to have to definitely watch out for, I feel.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that just then turns into like how you structure your team in terms of your strategy on the week, on each week, because either you're going to be in a situation where you keep Tapu Lele in the back and then you use that for late game, maybe as like a setup sweeper with like Calm Minds or something, or on the same thing you can build it up more towards the front. And use that as like more of like one of your core rotation, leaving the likes of Lopunny in the back. So I think it just builds more into how you structure your team when you build it each week.
Right. Well, and the thing is, you don't have to bring Psychic Surge necessarily. Telepathy is there. You need to fall back on that. If you have a game where you specifically really need your priority pressure, you can ensure that you don't mess yourself up by going with a different ability, of course.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. But obviously you want to kind of try and get any benefit you can if it does come from that, and it's not going, like you said, not hinder you too much. But yeah, it is still obviously an option to go with that telepathy.
Right. So looking at your team as a whole, let's see, we've got your Rapidash, Shaman, Rotom for Fire, Water, Grass. You've definitely got Fairy, Dragon, Steel going with Aegislash, Lele, and Hydreigon, I think. Between that, the utility you have, your ability to set and defog hazards is decent. What would you rate your team?
Well, I think I've potentially been a little harsh because it is my own team, because I've put it as like a solid B.
Yeah.
But I think like I may have been a little harsh on myself.
Yeah, I can see like Linoon in this is a little bit, I'm not sure how that'll pan out, but overall, I think these are all really great picks. I think they synergize pretty well. Like you said, you had a plan with that, Psychic Fairy and Dark Dragon. I would personally give this an A.
I'll take that and run. You can put it in an A.
I think we put this into the A tier. I think it's a really nice spot to start this list off at. Just really scary offensively, and definitely has the requisite defensive utility pieces to get some wins for sure. So. Moving on to the next team here, we have PSC. So looking at PSC here, they decided to go with the Mega Kang pick, but their very first pick, I believe, was Melmetal, which is...
Yes, and they actually had C2. They were straight after us.
Right. I think we're going in the pick order here, actually.
Yeah.
So, as you follow along with us here, we'll be going from the beginning of the draft to people who got to pick a little bit later in the draft. But Melmetal just an absolutely terrifying monster. Looks like they have prepared for potential TR mode. They have their cores. I've already looked at that. Silvally. Silvally is kind of an amazing pick, I think.
Yeah. I think Silvally was on a lot of people's radars because it's not unlike a lot of drafts, it's not being split for types. So by taking it, you can have any of the types. So I think it was on a lot of teams' radars.
Exactly. It really lets you kind of mold your team around what you want to do type-wise, and that's a very valuable thing. It has things like defog, U-turn, parting shot, really nice. Utility pivot, can set up, do damage as well.
And they got the big brother of my Gligar, so...
Yes, always a good... See, that's the thing, is like this Melmetal Gliscor, yeah, the Melmetal Gliscor core looks really good, honestly. Melmetal takes all those ice hits you want to send Gliscor's way. No earthquakes, because you can throw in Gliscor and just negate that entirely, so... What are any drawbacks you're seeing with this team? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, when I went through it, I have reconsidered, because in the initial time I looked at this team, I was a bit like, it looked very disjointed and didn't seem to flow. But the more I look at it, the more I'm kind of realizing, well, actually, like you said, with the Melmetal Gliscor, and then they've got the Silvally options in there as well. And then even when you look at what they've got further down on the list as well, with the likes of Spectrier in there, Thwackey in tier 5 to set up the grassy terrain as well. That actually gives further protection to Melmetal, because I believe grassy terrain reduces power of ground types, or at least earthquake.
EQ specifically, yes.
Yeah, EQ specifically, yeah. So that obviously will help in the protection with Melmetal as well. So I'm kind of, the more I look at this team, the more I kind of like it. The only big thing I flag is because they do seem to have quite a few quad weaknesses in that. There may be different ones, but there's still, like, you've got the quad weak ground with Melmetal, the quad weak, the ice with Gliscor, Como with Fairy. So there is quite a few quad weaks in there, which obviously, I don't know, it is very niche, but
well,
I
actually,
think it could.
Melmetal isn't quad weak to ground; it's just single weak. But
is it?
Yeah,
I always thought
it's solo steel type.
See, I always assume it's steel electric.
Oh, really? No, it's just
steel
type actually.
Oh,
so,
learn something new every day.
There you go, right? Yeah, so that is true. You see the quad weak Komodo. Gliscor isn't going to be resisting any Dazzling Gleams or Moonblast by any means, so it's not like you can just play switch shenanigans with those two. But I mean, if you look at this team, Spectrier gives it a really good speed tier at the top end, and I think that kind of continues throughout. Nothing really above 100 besides Spectrier that I'm seeing.
No.
But anyhow,
I mean, Thwackey does have some priority in there. I think that may be one of the only priorities.
Thwackey. Nidoqueen has Sucker Punch. Kanga has Fake Out.
Yeah.
Magmortar has Mach Punch. Golisopod has First Impression and Aqua Jet.
Oh wow, okay. So there's quite a bit in there. It's just not the usual what you would expect with the quick attack. I mean, yes, the Sucker Punch, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's not really... In terms of Nidoqueen, the Sucker Punch isn't usually the most relevant thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah, so, I mean, I've revised what I've put this down as for tier. Like I said, the more I'm looking at it. So I've kind of got this up in the C's somewhere.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, I think C is fairly reasonable. I personally had this at a B, but I'd probably be willing to go down to about a C+ with it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy with that, because I would be leaning more towards the higher end of C.
Yeah, this team is pretty well put together. I think it's going to have certain issues, but again, I mean, it's got its cores. It's definitely got good hazards and removal, so that's something that I always look for. So let's toss that right on into C+, I suppose. Alright. Now let's see, moving on to the next team. If you want to give this team an intro, why don't you talk a little bit about it? Looks like we've got the Provo Mudkips.
Provo Mudkips. So straight off, they went with obviously taking one. I think their first pick was Zeraora. I believe, yeah. And they've went with the strategy of obviously taking the lesser tier Mega so they can have the extra tier 1. So they've managed to actually pick up Zeraora, Manaphy, and Volcarona, and using Mega Sceptile to kind of complete that Fire, Water, Grass core in there as well. Which is obviously, it's pretty solid, and gives a lot of options for that. And to be honest, it just continues. There's a lot of scary mons in there. And then they've also got the good support options in there as well, with the likes of Chansey, Corsolas, and Nightmare to deal with in singles.
Yeah.
And then further down, they've obviously got the Mawile for the Intimidate options in there. Gerda is a very solid option as well. Overall, I think they've covered a lot of bases with that, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, their first few picks were just so scary when they went Zeraora, Manaphy, Mega Sceptile. Like, it all made sense because you look at Manaphy as one of his primary setup cleavers, and it's really well supported with the Lightning Rod that Mega Sceptile offers, the Volt Absorb from Zeraora, Chansey, obviously a great special sponge, and Corsola and Mudsdale, both formidable defensive mons in their own right. So I think he's done a good job supporting that. Have you noticed any drawbacks with
the main one I've went through, and this is where there's going to be some really obscure mons get something, but I'm struggling to see very consistent ways for removal of hazards.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that is my main issue with this team as well.
Yeah.
When Girder is your best defogger, I mean, that's definitely going to cause you some issues, I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what I was saying, is like the obscure ones, I'm like, there's got to be something in there that like is better as an option for that. Like, I was expecting something really obscure, like Corsola gets Rapid Spin or something, but there wasn't.
Unfortunately not. I don't know if Ribombee gets defog. I don't think it does. Volcarona might, but I mean, these are just, bug Pokemon you don't want to be your primary defogger generally.
No.
You're going to be switching on rocks a lot, and that's just, you can pack the boots, but there's going to be times when you don't want to, and it's just not ideal. So I definitely see some flaws with your removal core here.
No, absolutely. And Volcarona, like obviously you said about as well, that's probably alongside Zeraora one of his scariest mons there as well, so you ain't really going to be wanting to bringing that in just to deal with hazards when it's alongside Manaphy as well there. Like, it's such a big threat.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to want to be setting up quiver dances with that thing, or just, dishing out damage and you turning out whatever is good for you in the matchup, but certainly not defogging. The one thing I will say is I think he has enough, he has a well-rounded enough team that he's going to be able to make a lot of good pivots and defensive switches, and just hopefully get his team in a situation where it can set up that sweep. So I think that's going to be his bread and butter for the season.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I think the lack of removal has actually bumped it down quite a bit for me on this one, actually. Because like you said, he's going to be pivoting a lot to get in position because he has so many good switch-ins. But if he can't deal with those rocks, eventually that chip damage is going to wear that down a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
So I've actually got it down in the lower end of C.
Did you have it down at C-?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to give this team such a chance because I remember seeing his first 6 picks and just thinking, this is a devastating offensive core, but not having any removal, I have it written down as a C+, but I think I would go C- personally. Hazards are just so important in this metagame.
I think it is absolutely on the fence because of how much offensive threat in there. You are right. Like, I think it could go either way in the C, for C+ or C-.
Yeah. I think, for argument's sake, we should put it in C-, and hopefully he proves us wrong,
Yeah. I think they did last time. I think last time they did it and they got put in like C plus, and I think didn't they qualify for playoffs or something, or just
probably.
miss out?
Anytime I make these power rankings videos, there's bound to be a couple, if not quite a few, that prove me wrong. But you know what? We're not taking coaches' skill into account in this, so it is what it is. Let's see, as we move along down the line here, I've got the Johnny Sinzors up next, coached by Aaron. And this is quite an interesting team. As you can see, he's gone all in on the sand core here.
Yeah, I mean, these are our week ones, so we've looked at this quite a bit, and that is, they've got a lot for the sand there.
And what are you thinking about that? How do you feel about sand as really his main mode here? It almost seems like he's going to have to bring some level of sand to every game.
Yeah, I mean, it was literally like, because it was the biggest thing we realized is they haven't really got too much of a plan B apart from just try and brute force a win if you manage to remove the sand from the game. Right. So they haven't got a solid plan B, like a solid core they can fall back on. I mean, they come close to it in some ways, like they've got the Dracozolt, the Gallo-Weezing, but then they haven't really got the steel type in there to complete that. The Firewater Grass is Incineroar, Sceptile, and Barraskewda, or Slowking in there as well. So it's kind of like they haven't really got a solid core to fall back on either. But I mean, if they get the sand going and actually looking at it, if you can't deal with it, it could actually pick up some easy W's there. If you don't deal with that sand.
Oh, absolutely. Dracozolt is just terrifying. It can be, a really scary mixed attacker if you need to, shy away from its straight physical set. Tornadus is obviously amazing in or out of sand, but it is a primary weather abuser with its weather ball. Obviously in rain teams it uses Hurricane, things like that. But Incineroar, he does have some decent pivoting here between Tornadus, Slowking, Incineroar. With the Barraskewda with the flip turn as well. So there are some options there if he wants to run a non-sand team for some fast offensive turning to get in the right situations, but it would have to be pretty well built.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And then I think beyond that as well is obviously going down the pivoting route as well is kind of like you would have Tornadus for your defog, but then beyond that they may start to struggle with the hazard removal on that.
Yeah, certainly. The thing about that is, Tornadus is a great defogger. It's just such an amazing defogger. Weezing can pack the defog as well, so there is that option. Beyond that, it's not looking like a lot for removal, but he does have the ability to get his own hazards up with Mega Steelix going Stealth Rocks. Alright, I'm so sorry about that, guys. We had a little bit of a technical issue there, but we're back at it. And we are still currently talking about the Johnny Sinzors and their sand team. So go ahead, Scott. What were you kind of saying about that?
So I'm not sure where it fully cut out on me, but like obviously with the pivoting, I feel like kind of once the sand's gone, there's not really too much extra there apart from the pivots. And they're kind of relying on basically just Slowking, Tornadus, Incineroar, and Barraskewda as kind of brute force, just kind of push things as much as they can that way.
Yeah, certainly. And I mean, you do see 2 regenerator Pokemon in there with Tornadus and Slowking, so they can stay fairly healthy, but I'm wondering, how hard they're going to be hitting, if they're going to be in the right situation that they want to be in. So I do like Mega Steelix a lot. I really do. I think when we get to my team and you look at who we picked, there's probably a good reason that I have some admiration for Mega Steelix, but I've never really tried using it in the sand before, and I think it could potentially be pretty decent.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is one of the biggest physically defensive mons in the format, I think. I'm not sure, it might get pipped by 1, maybe 2 others, but definitely, it's definitely up there as one of the best physical walls.
Oh, I know our Mega beat it out in physical defense for sure, but that's for later. But
yeah.
Anyhow, yeah, options in terms of, setting up toxic spikes if he wants to do something like that. Does have a good physical wall in Buzzwole and a good, special wall in Slowking. So definitely some good options here for him.
No, absolutely. I think overall it is a relatively solid team. Like a lot of them in there, I don't think there is necessarily any really bad teams in the whole thing.
Yeah, I could debate that with at least one team, I think, but I don't know. I wouldn't say really bad, just maybe not fulfilling all those cores and roles that I'm looking for when I'm looking at each team. So
yeah.
What did you give this team?
So only on the basis of they're basically all gung-ho with the sand, I've got them in the C tier. Again, flirting between that C-, C+, but definitely at the top of C- or bottom of C+.
All right, yeah. I did have them as a B, but I could see them being in that C tier as well. So if we were going to split the difference, I think we could put them in C+, and I think that's fair because that's right in the middle of the tiers. That's basically average, So I'm going to drop them in C+. And yeah, I think that's not unreasonably high or low for them, considering they're going fairly all in on a certain strategy. So, moving on, if you want to get this one started here, we're looking at, I'm assuming it's pronounced Tricame Esta.
I've no idea. We've just been referring to them as Esta.
Yeah, it's obviously got a Spanish influence to it, so. My three years of Spanish coming in real handy right here.
Well, you've got 3 years more than me. But yeah, I actually really like this team. So I mean, they've got the Tapu Fini, Mega Scizor, Garchomp there straight away as the kind of Dragon Steel Fairy core. And then kind of backing that up as well, they've got some really solid mons with the Rotom. Heat can never be overlooked. Gengar can just win you games. Even going down to the lower tiers of big threats, like Drapion, Licky Licky are both threats. Swellow has so many different options it can bring as well. You can bring Scrappy, Specs, Boom Burst right the way through. There's Flame Orb, Guts, Facade. Yeah. I think this team, again, it's another one that's just packed full of threats, and I really like the fact that they've even utilized the lower tiers as well and still included them as potential threats and not just let's plug a hole with a type to make sure it's covered.
I agree 100%. And the thing that I love about this team is that, yeah, you look at it and you're like, wow, this is scary offensively in terms of Swellow, Gengar, Garchomp, Mega Scizor, things like that. But you look at all these mons and there's really a duality of nature. These mons are well-rounded, other than things like Gengar, really just Gengar and Swellow from what I'm looking at. So all these mons can take a hit, And yeah, I think that there's just so much terrifying offense between, Mega Scizor getting up SD. The Scizor, Fini, Rotom, H core there is just absolutely terrifying. You've got a good physical attacker. All those mons have a requisite amount of defense on either end that they can play with. They've got setup options in Nasty Plots, Calm Minds, and yeah, 2 Defogger. All 3 of them are Defoggers, actually. Crazy.
Yeah. And also, just Tapu Fini, 100%, even though you can put that offensive in, I would say it's such... I think it's arguably, and I'll put my neck on the block, I think it's the best support option mon because it's got the defog, it's got the misty terrain to protect you, it can set screens, it just has everything there that you would want a support mon to have. And it's I think it's just the best one available. And it complements so well, and there's so many threats like the Mega Scizor there.
Absolutely, yeah. You're going to be switching that Fini or even the Rotom into those fire attacks that Scizor doesn't want to take, and that's just invaluable to have with Mega Scizor as such a pivotal mon in your roster.
Yeah. And then the Misty will also stop the Mega Scizor getting wisped as well. So, I mean, it's absolutely perfect partner for it.
Absolutely, yeah. And you're seeing, you've got, looks like 4 Defogmons and a Rapid Spinner on this team. Let's see, Garchomp is their rocker. It looks like, Uxie.
Uxie, actually,
Yeah.
Uxie I've ran, and that is such an underestimated rock setter. Because it actually has a number of options as well for recovery and things like that as well. It's a very solid pick there.
It's great because it's so defensive. You can almost guarantee you're going to get those rocks up. And you know the coverage is so nice that you can potentially bop or chunk something very big on a switch in that thinks it can come in and maybe defog those rocks or handle Uxie, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and I mean, you just look at this Garchomp. I mean, this is insane. This is crazy to me. Really nice speed tiers. Everything, yeah, is relatively either fast or has priority or is bulky enough to take a hit and get an attack back. So I have to say, I want to give this almost the best ranking out of all the teams.
I mean, I've got it definitely as a solid A. I mean, there's definitely argument for S. It's definitely on that fringe of is it quite good enough to give it that S tier?
I have it as S personally because I just like, no matter what, you're not going to be able to throw enough hazards at this team because it has such good removal. Its offense is amazing. Its defenses can be pivoted and switched into. Licky Licky is there as a cleric, you know, if you need it.
I'll concede. Like I think it could go S. I'm happy for that to be stepped up and put that in the S tier.
You're really okay with this going up to S because I have it ranked as S.
I mean, I will say there is one team I've got further up that I think is a better S tier team than this.
Sure.
But I think it could scrape into the S tier. Yeah.
Sure, yeah, and I'm all ears when we do get to that team. You know, you sound off and let me know.
I will.
Let's see here. So we are gonna put Chukame Esta in the S tier. Big ups on you, Apache. Good job drafting. Let's see here. So we're moving into the next team, and this is one that we talked about a little bit before we started the video. We're looking at Rory and his Sleepy Snorlax.
Okay.
Okay. We got a conversation going on here.
Yeah, we do.
I guess I'll kick this one off, really. So, Rory decided to take Alolan Ninetales out of Tier 2 with his first pick, so it almost felt predestined that he was going to continue that trend and build himself a Hail team. And that's exactly what he did. I think the next 3 or 4 picks he took were all just Hail abusers. He went Alolan Sandslash, he went Arctozolt, he went Obama Snow, and oh gosh, was there anything else? No, I guess that's kind of the majority of his Hail core here. So the main issue I have with this team, just to get something a little bit negative out there before we say anything positive, because there are some positives. He's got a lot of repeat types. He hasn't filled out much of his cores. And again, when you see, this actually looks a little bit less dependent on the Hail maybe than that Sand team from Aaron did. But at the same time, his options for slotting things in outside of the Hail are pretty frail a lot of the time, so that definitely has me a little concerned. What are you thinking?
I'm definitely in agreement with your comment about the frail. Like, I think there's a lot of mons there that can't really take a hit. And again, my big negative one for this is actually, and I really hate to say it because I love the mon, is Heatran in this team just does not fit, in my opinion. I just feel like it has too many weaknesses in common with a lot of other things that are already there, and especially things in his core. And in my notes, I actually put, that mon, it should have just been some big, offensive threat, like an offensive dragon or something like that. Because if he'd had the offensive dragon in there, he's going to be bringing Ninetales and Sandslash most games. And although Sandslash isn't the strongest for that steel type, it would have gave him that full core that he would have been bringing most weeks. And I think that would have helped push that team up quite a bit.
I agree. Yeah. He needs a little bit more instant offense output without the Hail. And the thing that really concerns me is you look up and down his team, God forbid someone brings a really powerful rock type. Like, it hits super effective Yanmega, super effective Volcanion, super effective Thundurus, neutral Abominous Snow, Sandslash does resist it, hits super effective Arctozolt, super effective Galvantula, super effective Ninetales. You know, it's kind of scary when you look at the common weaknesses that he's sporting, and that's really one of my main gripes with this team. The other gripe I have is, where's your hazards, man? I mean, I know you have Galvantula for webs, and I believe Sandslash does get rocks as well. Heatran gets rocks.
Heatran gets rocks. Yanmega, I think, gets rocks.
No, Yanmega does not get rocks.
What's the one? There was something else I'd spotted gets rocks. It'll come to me. I'll just quickly search and see if I can find, but there was some other hazard I'd seen in there.
The only thing I can imagine is like Magic Bounce, Mega Absol bouncing back hazards onto the opponent's team, but
yeah, it might have been that I'd flagged up, because Magic Bounce is such a good ability,
it really
and I think
is.
that is, I think the fact of Mega Absol in this is definitely a good help. However, and this is my biggest point, is, dude, you've got 100 points left.
That's just unacceptable.
Like, you take that 60 points that you've got sat there on Yanmega, and all of a sudden you can take a tier 2, and like having 40 points left over, that's your Mega Absol there. You could have took a top tier Mega in that, and you would have still had, like, you had the change to do that, and it's having that so many points left. It's just it annoys me.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not a good look, you know, when you don't budget your points out correctly. So that being said, I really do like Volcanion with this team, especially sporting the heavy duty boots or something like that. It is a mon that can defog, can dish out damage on the switch. I do like Mega Absol personally, but the Magic Bounce ability is great. The only issue is you have to make sure this thing is Mega before you can actually take advantage of it. So if you know your opponent is going to be going for some sort of supportive move, you know, utility move like a Thunder Wave or something, and you want to switch this in, it has to be already Mega Evolved. So another small downside with that.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it is quite a small one though. But like, I mean, even then though, it's like, Magic Bounce aside, Mega Absol can still hit like a truck.
Oh yeah, and it can set up on both ends with Nasty Plot, Swords Dance, Sucker Punch, gets really great special coverage too, so.
Yeah. No, definitely. Like, I mean, in terms of scoring, like, I've got this down, as it stands, I've got this team down as bottom of C minus.
Yeah, and I personally have it down as a D right now. It is in the bottom of all my teams. Well, it's tied with one other team that I have here, so.
Yeah.
My question to you is, do you think it is so forlorn that it deserves that D tier, or is this something that we should keep in C tier and keep an eye on?
I think the only reason I had it higher is because it has so much potential, especially with that 100 points there. 1 or 2 trades, and this thing could, these guys could just become a real threat in the league.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's pretty reasonable, I think. You know, yeah, the other D, I mean, I'm if this goes to C tier, I almost feel like nothing goes D tier, because the other D tier team I have has some really good threats on it. But let's put
I mean, I'm happy to drop it down, but it's like, because obviously I've bumped it up based on potential.
Right.
So
well,
as it stands, I think
let's keep it in C minus. You know, I think there is an option there for, you know, his mode to go wild and claim him some wins, but I do want to see some trades or free agent moves being made here. Yeah. So as we move along here, I've got the Utah Draco Vicious, which is a team I think you thought pretty highly of, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, I think this is definitely one of the best teams in the league by quite a margin. And I know you have a bit of a different opinion there. And I'm not just being biased because they have my favorite Mega in Diancie. I'm not being biased. I genuinely think, like, in terms of constructing, So you've got, straight off the bat, you've got the core Mega Deontay, Dracovish, and Kartana. Okay? And then in tier 2, you've got Hippowdon as a sand setter, which can then also interact in a positive way with Kartana in the sand, being the steel type. Mega Deontay isn't impacted, and then it also has the benefit of the Sand Rush on the Dracovish. So I think building all that in, and then on top of that, building the further coverage with the likes of your Regieleki in there. Quillfish is a pretty solid mon for a lower tier, and going further down, I think it does taper off a bit towards the end, but that core is just something. I think it's really, really well done.
I actually, now that you really pointed out to me, I was thinking you were more basing this on mons like Regieleki, Galarian Moltres, and Infernape, which is a great mon. Infernape is actually one of, it goes right up there with above Hippowdon in my opinion in terms of draft league mons. But you're right. The way the sand interacts with Mega Diancie, granting it that special defense boost, the Sand Rush with Dracovish is really nice. Kartana doesn't take damage from it, doesn't get anything special from it, but doesn't take damage from it, which is nice as well. Yeah, the only issue I have is like seeing things like Ice Cube and Masquerain, and they're definitely, they can take you by surprise. And Masquerain does get Quiver Dance and Sticky Web, so it does have some really good options in that regard. But yeah, just a few small faults. I'm looking at, it has definitely a very good hazard team. Looks like, let's see here, Sticky Web Setter, 1, 2, 3 Stealth Rockers, and a Toxic Spike Setter. So you're definitely looking good in that mode. However, his defog is a little weak, I will say. He has some mons that can defog, but they don't want to sit there and do it, really, is the thing.
Yeah.
That being said, I think that is a small kind of reprimand on this team. I think realistically, if you don't get your rocks up in the first or whatever in the first couple of turns against this team, I think you're going to struggle to find a slot to be able to sacrifice a turn to get them up, because like so many mons in this team will just hit you so hard, and it could quite easily put you on the back foot so far that by a few turns in, is it worth trying? Yeah, I agree with you there. And the thing is, like, if you're setting up rocks if you happen to get the chance to set up rocks or spikes or whatever you're setting up, he has so many hazard setters that unless you're rapid spinning, you're probably going to have to defog your own hazards away at some point.
Yeah.
So that is one huge upside. I have this borderline A. I had it personally A, and what did you have this ranked as?
I had this as S.
You did have it as S, yep.
I had them in the S.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, how valuable mons like Galarian Moltres, who's great in doubles but not quite as good in singles, is going to be.
I mean, I think there is an argument, like you said, when you start looking at the likes of Drampa, Masquerain, Ice Cube, that it could drag it down into the A tier. But I think there is an argument for both tiers there.
Yeah, for sure. So where do you feel? What do you think? Are you giving any room on this, or is this like a hard S to you? You were talking about there was a S that you had way above Apache earlier.
This isn't them. This isn't them.
Okay. I think we go A with this one if you think that's acceptable.
Yeah, absolutely.
So second A tier team on the board, pretty even distribution so far. No B tiers yet. Which I actually have a few on my list. Not that many. So we'll see how that ends up being. Moving right along here, we've got Northwind's River. I'm not even going to try and pronounce the rest of that. Yeah, no, I'm not going to even give that a go. Okay. So we're looking at I actually really do like this core of Mega Altaria Corviknight. And Blacephalon gels with it well also. We're going to see that this team, in my opinion, has some really, really amazing setup options in terms of Corviknight definitely with its iron defense, bulk up. Mega Altaria, Dragon Dancing is amazing. We do have Blacephalon, which gets Calm Mind. We've got Azelf, which gets the Nasty Plot. Mimikyu for Swords Dance. Chestnut gets a lot of setup as well. Minior gets the Shell Smash. So one thing I saw right off the jump here with this team was that their setup game was on point.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the team overall?
Yeah, I mean, I'd flagged up about the setup because it's kind of like they don't need too much in a way around it. Having said that, I think Seismitoad not having a rain to potentially back that up could potentially hinder it a bit. But I don't think it's too much of a major issue because it is only that one mon. I think the only other one which maybe could have majorly benefited from it was potentially Electros for Thunder.
Strange
but
thing
even
about
then, I think
Seismitoad in singles, especially draft. I mean, not especially draft because you can do anything you want in draft, but the majority of the time you're going to be seeing it run as a water absorb, bulky, stealth rock setter, maybe an assault vest with a lot of really good coverage. So I don't necessarily have a problem with them not having a swift swim rain setter. At the same time, it would be great to have that extra dimension.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm not talking about building like a full rain core in there. Just like obviously the one extra option in there does obviously help, and it is something that they will have to factor in for because all of a sudden, any mon that gets Weather Ball is suddenly a threat. It's an extra threat for them.
That's very true. That's very true. I'm not sure that they have many mons that can utilize that. I don't know. Mega Altaria might get it. I'm not 100% sure on that, but Seismitoad obviously does. Yep. So that's an upside for them. Another thing I've noticed is like their hazard control looks okay. Mega Altaria doesn't really want to defog, but it can. Corviknight's obviously an amazing defogger. Eldegoss is a rapid spinner. But let's look at their hazard setting, and you see it's Seismitoad. I think Minior might get hazard stealth rocks. I'm not 100% sure on that. It's mostly usually just a shell smash, sweeper, and then Azelf. That's their hazard setters. So a little bit sparse in the setting and removing front.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they are pretty sparse in it, but they do have kind of the power to kind of play around that. But still, I think definitely one or two more options on that on either side would definitely help the team quite a bit.
Well, the funny thing is, you say they have the power to play around it, and I agree in a certain way, like I said about the setup, but really, just out the gates, they don't have a lot of really high base stat attack or special attack Pokemon, really. Azelf definitely has a really high speed and special attack and attack, but yeah, Mega Altaria always likes to get it set up. Corviknight, more kind of a defensive pivot. Blacephalon has the power. Seismitoad, it's like 90 and 80 in offenses. It's nothing crazy. Same with Electros. Eldegoss is fairly weak and has very poor coverage. Chestnut is good. It's mostly bulky, but it can, it does have the opportunity to belly drum and some weird stuff. So not a lot of initial power I'm looking at. So I'm wondering how all this is going to jive in terms of getting up their hazards and getting off hits that are threatening opponents who want to defog.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I was saying, is like, they don't necessarily need too much in the way of removal, because once something's in, it probably is going to be, they're going to try and keep them in and get them set up. So there is going to be very limited pivoting I can see from this. Once they do kind of have a position, they're just going to try and hold it.
Yep. I could see that, Corviknight's going to try and U-turn a little bit here and there, but otherwise, yeah, and Azelf could get a U-turn, but it's fairly frail, so once you hit it, it's going to be going down pretty quick. So, yeah. What did you think about the overall composition of this team? What kind of rating did you give them?
So, for these guys, I have put them to the C+, B tier sort of boundary. I would kind of potentially edge it down into the C+.
That is
purely
exactly
because,
where
like
I
you
had
said,
them ranked. I had them at the C+ myself, personally. So
yeah,
I think
No,
considering
absolutely.
that
I
you
think
have them in that area, that's a pretty good place for them to land.
yeah, I think definitely would have put them up in straight into B if they had like the one mon or two mons that, like you said, had that naturally bit higher attack and didn't need that setup.
Right, exactly. I think so too. Something that can just net you kills off the jump, or you can scarf it with an insanely high attack or special attack, and it can do some work. So,
Yeah.
anyhow, moving right along, we've got the Mimos Swines, captained by Jamie, I believe, and featuring Paul and Mike. This team, dude. This team for me. It's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. Mega Aerodactyl is such an underrated mon as a Mega in Draft League. It can do so much, especially with the addition of Dragon Dance to its moveset. And you're looking at things like Greninja Battle Bond, which I believe was their first pick, an amazing first pick.
Yeah.
Super powerful. They've got Entei, decent legend, nothing crazy there. Florges, good defogger, good cleric. What I'm really happy about with their team is their hazard removal options. They've got Rapid Spinner in Claydol, Rapid Spinner in Fortress, Defogger in Florges, Defogger in Aerodactyl, and of course a Setter in Aerodactyl, Spike Setter in Greninja, Rocks and Spikes from Fortress, all hazards from Fortress, of course, and Rocks from Claydol, so Spikes from Frostlass. It's just, I love when people put a variety of setters and removers on their roster. Just gives us that much more variability to what they're going to do to you game in, game out.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does help if it's setters and things as well that you can realistically bring every week. And it's not just something that you're putting in as a dedicated Stealth Rock setter or a dedicated, it's there because it has defog. It's something that they can bring in that will also contribute to the team in other ways as well.
Yep, absolutely. What are you thinking about the offensive composition of this team?
Scary. I mean, you've touched on it as well. I mean, the other thing as well, Entei with priority and the extreme speed there as well. Greninja's obviously extremely fast as well, so they can come and put pressure on you so fast. Rillaboom with the grassy terrain, grassy glide. I mean, Haxorus with D-Dance as well, so they've got the two D-Dances.
Yeah, God forbid he goes off with a crazy... God forbid you're weak to Bug type and he gets you with a Life Orb first impression or just a really strong first impression in general. I mean, yeah. Very powerful mon. Very powerful mons in general. This team looks to me like comparable on the level of offense as Apache's Tricame Esta and your team. I would rate those three as probably the top three in offensive output out the gates.
Yeah, definitely offensively scary.
Now, when we're looking at defense, I'm thinking Florges is a great mon. Does have the opportunity to get worn down a little bit. I believe it has, and I'm going off the dome here, but 68 HP stat. So, but it does have that Wish, Protect, amazing special defense, good defense as well. Moonblasts hit hard. Its HP hits hard. Claydol's pretty defensive, same situation, kind of low HP. Fortress, kind of same situation, low HP. So those are his three really defensive pivot type mons, and I'm wondering how realistically long can he make those last throughout a match if it ends up going 50 turns or something like that, you know?
Yeah, that's literally like the exact thing I flagged up there. Like, how many of those mons are just glass cannons?
Yeah, and again, I really do think, I mean, Florges is a really great defensive pivot type mon. Same with Fortress. Actually, both those tier 3s are selected for a reason, and I can really appreciate that. But I don't know if it'll be enough to really get this team by if someone has something that's got speed set up on them or something that has really strong priority. So that kind of remains to be seen. What did you end up rating this team overall?
So I had these guys down as an A tier.
Yep. Okay.
with the basis of them getting pulled down and not quite making that S tier just because they haven't really got that bulk and that potential longevity, and the couple of other little bits we have discussed there. So, but it's definitely up there.
Yeah, Team Sad will know my love for what I like to refer to as defensive pressure, and I definitely do rank highly based on that. Some people don't think defensive pressure is a thing, but you know, I live in my own little world. That being said, I did have this actually ranked as an S tier. Do you think that's a little bit of an overstatement?
Yeah, just purely because like they tick a lot of the boxes, but it's just the fact of, like you said, if they come up against like something that's a bit faster, that can hit that little bit harder, and they take down those one or two walls they've got, all of a sudden they're just in a race of like, can I now just literally do enough damage as quick as possible?
Right. Okay, so let's put them in A tier. I think that's a reasonable compromise on that one. I think you brought up some really good points there. Let's see here. And we're moving on to my team, actually. Again, this is a team event, so I do have two other teammates, but yeah, this is the admins. Now, I think I did introduce the last team. If you want to give me some outside perspective on my team, I would love to hear that.
Yeah, so definitely got a lot of scary mons in that list. Obviously, you've got the Mega, which you kind of hinted at before, with the high defense, and I'm guessing you had, like, again with the defensive pressure, you had some influence in picking that. But yeah, I mean,
one of my other teammates didn't believe in it, but we've been doing some mocks this week, and yeah, I think he's realized how defensively incredible Aggron actually is.
No, for sure. Like, it is definitely something that you need to kind of think about, is how you're going to get over that. Is definitely something that can't be overlooked. And also picking up, I think, was Urshifu your pick one?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and it might be controversial, maybe not. Like, I think Urshifu, there is arguments on both sides of the fence of whether that should actually be in the draft format, because I think it is definitely up there as one of the strongest tier ones in the format.
I think if Urshifu had 10 more base speed, it would be absolutely broken. Just 100%, unbelievably uncountable.
Is it 97? Is it?
Is it 97 or 90? It's 97. I believe you're right.
Yeah. So I think even just giving it 5 more and letting it break that tier, I think would be enough.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm looking at it breaking like Garchomp's tier, basically, is what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Right now. But yeah, it's that simple for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's Unseen Fist is just, it should not be a thing.
It's so bad.
You can tell I'm a salty VGC player.
Yeah.
It should not be allowed. It should never have been made.
Word to the wise: don't try and use King Shield when we bring in Urshifu against you.
I know. It's I've done that. I've made that mistake.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, definitely that, having that there, and then obviously rounding out, you've got the core there as well, with Aggron, Latias, and Sylveon as well, which is really solid. You've got a good spread of like different options there as well. Like, you've got even the lower tier picks like Cryogonal coming in as spinners, Thunderous sneaking in there in the middle as well. There's a lot of scary mons and a lot of mons that can come in and do different roles, and alongside those roles actually do some real damage to you if you don't prepare for them. So I think it is actually quite a scary team that you've managed to put together there.
Yeah, thank you. I tend to agree in a lot of ways. I'm not 100% satisfied with Cryogonal. It is a good special wall. You know, it can spin, defog, haze, freeze dry, all that good stuff. But yeah, decent mon. Golurk, a little bit slow, but we definitely needed a ground type, something that could hit again on the physical end. But when you look at like this group of mons, speaking of Mega Aggron, Urshifu, Sylveon, Latias, Thunderous, Meloetta is something that like we haven't even mentioned, but it is a force to be reckoned with in Tier 3. It's very, especially defensively bulky. Can set up, especially with Calm Minds. 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 Can can go into its pirouette form and do a lot of physical damage too. So something I'm excited to see used. And then Araquanid, obviously another bulky mon in general that can just, you know, put up webs, be annoying, soak up Will-O-Wisp, soak up fire attacks, and just do some work.
No, for real, like so much stuff there. Also, Salazzle definitely needs a shout out there as well, because that ability Corrosion is definitely something that can catch people off guard and is actually sometimes forgotten about as well.
Yeah, the thing about Salazzle is if you're able to get a substitute up, it can do so many different things. You know, it can Toxic Stall, or it can set up nasty plots and just start eviscerating opponents' teams. So nothing to be underlooked. Very situational for sure, but it will definitely make it to some battles, and I'm sure it'll put in some good work. So.
Oh, absolutely, and I think it's definitely one of the faster fire types in the format as well.
Yeah, I believe
it's
it's at a base 117 or something. Alright guys, and we're back. Please pardon our constant technical difficulties here, but anyhow, as we were saying, Salazzle a good mon. This team in general, I really am happy about what we were able to draft. What do you think, Scott? What kind of ranking would you give a team like this?
So I've kind of got you guys on the sort of B to A bracket there, like on the verge of that. I think Urshifu and Latias do kind of tip you into that A territory though, so I'm quite happy for it to be stepped up into there potentially.
Yeah, I had myself, I mean it's hard to evaluate your own team, right? But I had myself ranked at A... Sorry, I don't even have the team up here for you guys to look at. Okay. So... Yeah, I think just considering how much power there is on this team, I have to put it at an A. There's a pretty good amount of bulk too, especially on the special side, but I definitely had myself decently placed in A tier, I think. So if you're agreeable with that, let's put us
absolutely
there. And we've got a pretty large A tier filling out, actually. A is the fullest tier at this point, so...
Wow, yeah, might have to reevaluate some of those, but...
We can take a look at the end, I guess, and see if we think anything is worth re-ranking. But in the meantime, let's move on to our next team, which is the Ascending Cinder Knight Gods.
Yeah.
I think you kind of introduced my team last time, so I'll give this one a little brief introduction. Okay, It looks like, obviously, this is a Sun team. You've got the Megazard Y, very interesting pick. Mew, which is, I believe, was their first pick overall, maybe.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Yeah, just a very unpredictable mon. Can do so many things. If you need it to hazard control, be support, or run setup and sweep an opponent, it can do all those things. Grimmsnarl, always great for setting up screens, bulk up, sucker punch, does have a fairly good physical attack. Venusaur, obviously one of their premier Pokemon, as this is a Sun team, you're going to see that chlorophyll coming out. Gastrodon, a really nice bulky mon for this roster. Yeah, looking further down, we're looking at Zapdos, Galar, which is just a really good overall Pokemon. Goodra, who is good in its own right. He definitely needed a Dragon type. And Empoleon, which looks like it's going to be really, other than Mew, the premier defogger on the team. What do you think about their picks overall?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely like that three-man Suncore of Charizard and Venusaur, and then Gastrodon to kind of cover them on weakness is definitely strong. Yeah. But then when you kind of get to a point where if you manage to play around the weather, remove it from a rain dance, or even just bringing in your own weather, it kind of does fall quite flat. You do have, like you said, Goodra as the option for Dragon, but looking down the list, I think Mew is probably actually, looking at it, the only solid hazard setter.
Yep. And Empoleon does get rocks, so there is that. But
oh yeah, but I mean, I think realistically, week in, week out, Mew is the one that is the go-to. And it just kind of is that what you want? You're kind of dedicating such a versatile mon for that role.
Right, Mew really hates to be pigeonholed into such a narrow role. Exactly.
Yeah, but I mean, on the other side, like on the defensive side, I think Grimmsnarl is probably one of, if not the best screen setter in the game. It definitely is in like VGC format as well, but in this as well, having that is a huge bonus for them.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think there's a lot that you can do with that Grimmsnarl. Even if it's other tricky things, you know, it's got the prankster ability, so you are able to throw off T-Waves, trick lagging tails, all that annoying kind of stuff as well. So definitely a nice utility mon in its own right.
Yeah. I do have to say, actually, taking the regular Rotom was quite an interesting one for me down at the end there. I'm kind of, I mean, I think that actually does get defog as well.
It does. It does.
Yeah. So I mean, they do have that, and I mean, I think that is like their ghost type, so that'll be the only thing they really have as a spin blocker as well. So I don't know. I mean, it is. I don't know what's available in that without going through, but I don't know if that's kind of a bit of a weaker pick there on the bottom for them. Double as well, actually. I'm not totally convinced with that.
Yeah, I would agree with those low tier picks are a little bit sketchy in some manners. And I do think, like you said, their lack of reliable hazard setting and removal, you know, it's like, even if they do have a couple mons that are able to do it, it's almost guaranteed that those mons are going to be packing those moves. So it makes it a little bit easier for the opponent to play around.
Yeah, and I mean, also on top of that, like outside of the weather, like touching back on that, I think the only real big hard hitter would probably be Charizard Y after it's Mega Evolved.
Yeah, Galarian Zapdos has a pretty respectable attack stat as well. Gudra can actually do some pretty decent damage too, but outside of that, you're not going to be seeing a lot of really, really heavy hitting Pokemon initially here.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that could come back to bite them a little bit.
Yeah, certainly. So, with all that being said, what are your feelings about this team in terms of a ranking?
I think they're definitely a C. It just depends on which side of that they fall, I think.
Yeah, you know, I kind of had them as a B, but the more I talk about it, the more I think, like, you're right. This is one of those teams that has kind of that same vein as Rory, like, hey, look, this is a very Sun-centric team, and when it's not, it just doesn't have the pieces that it needs to be effective in like a normal balanced offense type of game. So I would agree somewhere in the C tier is a reasonable place to put this.
Yeah, I think if you've got it B, I'm happy for it to go C+. But like, I think one thing that we're definitely highlighting is like, if you are drafting weather, you do need that plan B. I think you'll agree with me there.
Oh, 100%. You don't want to become one-dimensional. That makes it way too easy for your opponent to prep for you. So you're definitely going to want those ancillary pieces that can work in or out of the rain, sand, hail, or any of that.
I love how we're saying that, and there's one team coming up who's going to potentially prove us completely wrong.
That's true, but I think that it was a little more well thought out. So anyhow.
Yeah.
In fact, well, no, not yet. We are going to be moving on to Ultimate Lucky Yang and taking a look at their team. If you've got a little bit of intel on them, Scott, why don't you let the viewers know what you think?
Yeah, so, I mean, straight off, Mega Mawile is very, very solid Mega. And then adding that in with Latios as well, I think is just a great starting point. My only thing is with their tier 1 picks, they've got the Latios and they've got the Victini. Taking 2 tier 1s of the same type, I think is it's a bit risky, because that's they're 2 of their main hard hitters, and they've got a type in common. But then when you kind of look further down the roster, they have got a couple of good defog options with Honchkrow and Rotom. They've got a good hazard setters with Don Fan in there. Heracross is actually like very versatile. There's a few different sets there. Weezing as well. That can be a nice wall. I think it is very well rounded, but they have gambled a little bit on the higher end there.
Yeah, I could see what you're saying there with the Victini Latios. I think when they bring those, they're going to be bringing probably one or the other most often, but it looks as though they have already played a week here. I haven't watched any of these games so far, but looks like they did bring both that week. So, and it looks like they were both the kill leaders for that week. So, something to note for sure. Yeah, their hazard removal is decent. Honchkrow doesn't really want to do it too much, but Rotom Frost is good. Weezing is actually a decent defogger in its own right. Donphan can spin. Latios can also defog. Doesn't really want to, but it can. And yeah, for setters, we're looking at Pokemon. Mega Mawile does get the Stealth Rocks. If you want to slot that in on your Mega, then go ahead. Donphan, of course, can set the rocks, as well as Heracross, and they do have that Toxic Spike option with Weezing as well. So I consider that a pretty reasonably well-balanced hazard and removal core. And yeah, I just think there's a lot of power across this team. They do have a Cleric and Audino, who I personally really like. Kind of similar to Licky in a lot of ways. And yeah, I really do like this team a lot.
I must say, I'm really interested to see Zarude. I think I've only ever actually seen it used once, maybe twice in draft as well. So I'm quite interested to see what they actually do with that. I don't know how much experience you've got going up against it in draft.
Not a lot in draft. I mean, I've played it back when it first came out, on Showdown, Smogon, OU, UU, as it fell down the tiers a little bit. And yeah, it does have. It's one of those mons where in certain situations it's really good, and in a lot of other situations it just doesn't have the defenses to put up with being barraged by a lot of attacks. Its defensive typing isn't necessarily amazing,
It isn't amazing, but it's definitely interesting because I don't know. I think there's only is it Shiftry and Cacturn share it with it, and I mean both of those are pretty on their day are very respectable.
Ooh, I wouldn't consider either of those that respectable, really.
I think in their tiers they are. They're not going to be something that you slap in an OU team, but when you get them in their tier, they're definitely something to consider.
Yeah, I can see that.
Especially because I think Shiftry's pretty fast as well, if I remember right.
It's base 80, I believe. So.
Is that it?
That's it. Yep. I'm actually going against one that VGC. I was prepping for a VGC draft match today, and I'm actually playing against a team that has Shiftry, so I know for a fact. Yeah, it's base 80, kind of middling.
Oh wow, that's a lot slower than I expected it to come out at.
Yeah, and when you consider that it's weak to flying, fire, ice, fighting, a lot of fairy, of course, a lot of really common offensive attacking types. Yeah, it just doesn't hold up so well. But the thing about Zarude is it does have the option to bulk up, set up, use jungle healing, so it does have its own recovery built in as well. So something to look out for, no doubt.
Oh yeah.
So after kind of, I mean, if we look at their cores, they do have really good cores. I mean, Suicune, an amazing bulky water. I think they are, Victini is their fire type, which is not incredibly bulky, but does hit incredibly hard, has amazing coverage. Yeah, their grass being Zarude is kind of in between the two, not super bulky, not incredibly hard hitting. And then you look at their Fairy, Dragon, Steel core, and I mean they have the Fairy and Steel all built into one mon in Mega Mawile, so I think that's a very powerful 2-mon punch there for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And Honchkrow is such a good revenge killer as well. On top of that, to support any of those. I used it in the last. I used it in the last season of DLC, and I remember how much of a pain it was for some people to prep for.
Oh, definitely. I mean, if you get Moxie going too with those sucker punches, it can really start rolling.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Life Orb on there as well, or even I've choice banded it one week, which was insane.
Yep. So, with all that being considered, what did you have Ultimate Lucky Gang down as for your ranking?
I had them down at C+, because I think they could argue it up into B, but I think, again, going back to that, the risk of them tier 1s being exploited could hurt them quite a bit, so I did drop them down a little bit.
Interesting. I actually had them all the way up in A. I think that the power is unavoidable here. I'm really happy with their hazard setting and removal, which is incredibly important. Their defensive bulk is pretty decent too, with things like Rotom, Weezing, Donphan, Suicune, Mega Mawile can take a hit too. So, with all that considered, I decided to put them in the A tier personally. But I'd be willing to split the difference and maybe go B tier if that sounds something like you'd be interested in.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. Like I said, I think there is an argument for being higher up than I put them. I've probably marked them down a bit more than I should have done for the tier 1s.
Yeah, I do understand that typing redundancy, but those are both pretty quick mons. You can get their damage off. So if they can make it work, then good for them. For now, let's slot them here in the B tier, and they are our first B tier team, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yep. So now we will continue on down the line onto Team Sad, which is Scotty, Anders, and Devin, the PTG crew. And yeah, we can look at their weather team. Yet another weather team.
And this is the one I said, I did mention it earlier in the video. This is the one I had as the solid, this has to be S.
I have them down as S too.
I will
personally.
say that straight now. Yeah.
I do also have them down as S. And you look across this team, it's a pretty basic weather team. You're going to see Pelipper, Zapdos, which I believe actually has been traded. I don't know if you heard about that, but I think they did drop Zapdos.
I think that might be a mistake.
I agree.
In my opinion.
I agree. They already have Kingdra. They ended up picking up Kyurem Black, which is, you know, I understand they look at it there on the board in Tier 1 and they're thinking, wow, this is just such a good Pokemon, you know? How can you pass this up? But Zapdos is a staple on weather teams for a reason, you know? And they've got the Pelipper setting the rain. They've got Breloom, which is going to take reduced fire damage in the rain. Same thing with Metagross, an amazing Mon, sets up the rocks, can set up with agility, Meteor Mash, all kinds of good stuff. We've got Zoroark, who I think can be really nifty actually with its speed tier on their team. I think he can really throw some opponents for a loop, play some annoying guessing games. We've got Meowstic for the Prankster, Kingdra, obviously, and another amazing Pokemon to go side by side with Mega Swampert in the rain. Clefable, and like top tier Cleric, number one top tier Cleric. Can do so much with Magic Guard and Unaware, two amazing abilities. And then Armaldo's a Swift Swimmer as well with the capability to spin, and Zebstrika is going to be taking those electric and grass attacks that the water type teammates don't want to take on this team. When you look top to bottom here, what do you think?
I mean, I think it's an absolutely nigh on perfect team. I know they've already made trade. I don't think they even needed to trade really, because I don't know what could be improving in this team. I do have to say I do really like the fact of them taking Metagross, because I know usually in the rain teams that team's usually filled with Ferrothorn.
Right.
And I just love the fact of it being Metagross because there's so much more offensive options there with things like weakness policy coming in.
Yes, the cool thing is, it's like they split Ferrothorn into two separate Pokemon with Breloom and Metagross, but then you get that secondary typing on each of them, and it just works so nicely with the rest of their team. It's not duplicate, it's, you know, it's something that they definitely needed, and I think it's very respectable that they picked up both those Mons in Tier 3.
Absolutely. And I mean, touching back on what you said about Zoroark as well, for a rain team as well, which is which has so many weaknesses with the grass types and electric types, that can be so strong just to kind of bluff that.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, you know, if you go up against something like, if you think it's a Pelipper and it's a Zoroark, you know, you're going to get taken by surprise when it outspeeds you and maybe bops you with Dark Pulse or Sludge Bomb, or depending on what you're facing off against, it can definitely.
I was actually thinking, and I actually think Pelipper is the only one they can't bluff with the Zoroark because of the drizzle.
Oh, that's true. Good point.
It's literally that's what I was working out. I was like, is there a bad instance for using Zoroark? And that is, I think, the only time in this team you don't want to be using the Zoroark is if it's bluffing Pelipper.
Yeah, I was almost thinking just because they both get U-turn, you know, you could make it seem like a scarfed Pelipper or something, but you're right. If it doesn't pop off with the drizzle, then yeah, that's going to give it away. You're right.
Yeah. But I love the fact as well, they have, touching on what we said earlier about the weather teams and things not having a solid core, this thing actually has a really good core in Kingdra, Clefable, and Metagross there, and I really like that as a core.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Clefable just fits this team so perfectly. You know, it's an amazing grab. 180 points, well spent. You can never go wrong with. I'm sorry, did I say Kingdra? I meant Clefable. You can't go wrong with Clefable. It just has. It's another one. It's like a Mew almost. It's so diverse. So, I guess the question is, do you think moving to Kyurem B is a legitimate downgrade?
I think there's arguments for both. I've used Kyurem B before. I don't know, because I think the only thing I would have possibly considered changing it for would have maybe been changing Zapdos for Thundurus, purely just because of the different stat depending on how you wanted that role to be filled out. But I think it's going to take the team in a slightly different direction.
Yeah, I agree. It looks like they didn't bring this Zapdos week 1. Again, I haven't watched the match, but yeah, I think giving up on it this early was maybe a little bit preemptive. And I do know that neither Thundy is available, so they couldn't have gotten Thundurus.
Yeah.
But anyhow, that being said, just based on what we're seeing on the screen here, I'm going to just paste this team with an S. I think it is S-worthy. And that's our second S-tier team. Usually, like, in any given draft power rankings, I only have, like, one S-tier maybe, but they're well-deserving of it. They're well-deserving of it. So
absolutely, yeah.
Moving on here, we've got the Mahogany Mamoswines, which are coached by Forrester. And yeah, it looks like they are running Mega Heracross, Dragapult, which was their #1 overall pick, Slowking Galar, Porygon 2, so 2 really nice walls back-to-back, Moltres, which is actually pretty good in the format, running heavy-duty boots, Piloswine, Shiinotic, and then Celesteela, Tapu Koko, which is just an amazing, amazing, amazing Tumon core there.
I was getting flashbacks of Sun and Moon VGC seeing those two.
Oh yeah, and if you saw those two on your screen in VGC in Sun and Moon, you would be a little bit worried, trust me. Prinplup and Houndoom, you know, I think they're kind of garbage picks, to be quite honest with you, but it looks like you didn't have the points to do much of anything else. What are your thoughts about this team?
I really, really like this team a lot. I think they've definitely, I think they are actually the only team who's went down the route of taking 3 actual tier 1 picks, rather than just sacking and going down to a tier 2 for one of the other picks so they can bump up one of the others when they have got the extra points from the Mega.
Right.
And I really rate that. I've done that before, and it does pay off, especially when you get... I mean, they've built their full core out of tier 1 with Dragapult, Celesteela, and Koko.
Yeah.
And that's a very, very, very strong core. I also noticed as well, there is the potential in this team as well for Trick Room shenanigans as well. Which I think could be quite interesting to see if they did bring a full Trick Room team one week.
Yeah, it's not very common in singles that you see a full Trick Room team, but I mean, with mons like Slowking, Porygon 2, and Mega Heracross kind of leading the way with that, the ability to teleport, regen with Slowking, Porygon 2 gets teleport as well, you can safely get that Mega Heracross in and take down a lot of faster, more threatening opponents.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And Celesteela would also fit in that with the Stally stuff as well, and build in. I mean, it's definitely an option. Like, not necessarily the full 6, but there is something that could be built in.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, looking on the side of hazards and hazard removal, though, I think they have got the Piloswine in there. They've got Moltres' Defog. Prinplup, I think, has Defog as well. So they do have a few options there for that.
Yeah, the one worrisome factor is their actual hazard setting, which looks like it's all on Piloswine and Heracross. But I think a lot of the time, what I do love about this team is their speed tiering. Like, you look at things like Dragapult leading the way on down to Tapu Koko, you know, just kind of moving on down into, I mean, Houndoom is whatever, but you're looking at mons like Moltres, which is the next step down there. Could use a little more, maybe low 100 a tier down there, but again, it's just so well varied. I think it has a lot of capability to speed creep the opponent. And yeah, I think that this team in general, I love the fact that they have Porygon 2 and Slowking. It's just such a good defensive core. The one thing I will say they are missing is a little bit of a better Cleric in terms of like a Wish Passer and a Heal Beller. But overall, I do really like the team. I think it has a lot of offensive capabilities here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like, there's so many ones there where if you don't prep anything for it, that one could get 3-4 kills on you easy. So you have to kind of really think about prep for this team. Absolutely.
Definitely. It's not going to be as easy as just covering everything. You have to see what they're going to want to bring against you, because they just have such huge threats, and Dragapult being able to set up, Celesteela with the Beast Boost, Tapu Koko out the gate is just strong to begin with. So anyhow, what did you end up giving this team for a ranking?
I've actually got them set in B.
You do have them in B, okay. You know, I had them in A, and I am actually a little bit interested in maybe moving them down to B with that kind of issues a little bit with their hazards, and then the speed tiers being, you know, they have a really nice high and low, but they don't necessarily have each tier filled out. So yeah, I think I'm comfortable moving them down to B, if that's where you think they belong.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Oh, I think I accidentally put them at A instead of the Mamoswines. Too many Mamoswine themed teams here.
I mean, we could, I don't know if they're in the same division, we could end up with a full Mamoswine final.
It's possible, I suppose. At least if they are in the same, at least semis. Oh. Anyhow, we've only got 2 teams left, it looks like here. We've got the Montreal unit next. And why don't you take it away on their team composition, what they decided to draft here?
So yeah, I mean, they've got the Mega Alakazam in there as an offensive option, especially considering they've got the Indeedee, so they are going to be doing some lovely psychic terrain shenanigans in that. They have picked up a couple of Unburden users as well with Slurpuff and Holucha, so you can definitely see that that is something that they are factoring in for a team build. Further down as well, they do have Tyranitar, Rhyperior, Scizor, so they do have potential for some sand and weather influence as well. Quagsire could put under that as well. Slowbro Galar there as well, really strong. I think that gets Teleport as well. So that'll give them a nice pivoting option there. And then rounding out with the Luxray and Miltank is definitely some pretty solid picks in there. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if you flagged up anything other than the obvious of the weather and psychic terrain potential there.
Yeah, I mean, I think like you said, it's really obvious their psychic terrain angle here between Alakazam and Indeedee and that Slowbro. They do have a little bit of a weather availability. They do have a little bit of a bulkier core with that Scissor, Tyranitar, Rhyperior. My main issue with this team is that there is a level of redundancy to the typings that they've picked and the roles they've decided to fill. And you know what, Slowbro, I just want to double check because that caught me kind of by surprise. It does not get Teleport.
Does it not? The Galar
no.
doesn't?
Regular Slowbro does, but not Galar.
Nah. Okay.
One shining beacon of hope here that I see is Miltank. Miltank is one of those draft mons, and I don't know why there's no points next to it. I'm not sure it's got to be 60, right? Oh yeah, let's do that in there. Miltank is one of those mons that can just do so much. It's a great heal beller, stays around with Milk Drink, it can curse and sweep if you need it to, sets up rocks, just annoys people with Body Slam, scrappy seismic tosses to wear down your opponents. A really, really good mon with an unbelievably surprising speed tier at base 100, so I do like that mon in draft.
Explains so much of why everyone hated it in gold version.
Yep, absolutely. Luxray is actually a really, really good tier 5 pick too. It's one of the highest quality tier 5 picks in my opinion. But I love all these pieces individually. I just don't think they jive together very well. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it does, like, literally, you've pretty much, the word I've used for it is it's just a pile of good stuff.
Yep. Oh, that's funny.
I mean, like, I definitely think scooping up the 2 really strong Unburden users as well is definitely going to help that Psychic core as well. But, like, I think I went through and I worked out, it's like, they've got the Fairy and Slurpuff, the Steel and Scizor, but then they ain't got a Dragon. And then you look on the other side of things for, like, you can't build any of the cores really from them. So it is, like, again, what we're saying with the weather and those style teams, where they've got the terrain core or the weather core, but then they haven't got, like, a normal core just to kind of be there as backup plan.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, you look at their hazards and removal, they have some decent hazard setters actually in Rhyperior, Tyranitar. It's got Slurpuff does get the sticky webs as well if they want to go that direction. Mm-hmm. And then I thought they had one more. Oh, Miltank, of course. No, Miltank. Miltank gets the stealth rocks as well, but their only really halfway decent remover is Scizor here.
Yeah.
So That definitely has me a little bit worried. It's like, I feel like they're going to have a hard time playing their game. I think they're going to have to adhere to a lot of what the opponents wants to do with them. Their best chance is maybe to throw them off with whether they go with the sand or the terrain or how they want to play that. But otherwise, I think that when it comes to game planning, this team is going to have a fairly difficult time outplaying their opponent.
Yeah, I think the only other thing I have kind of flagged is they can put on that really fast offense, because obviously, especially after the Unburden, Hawlucha and Slurpuff, and then Mega Alakazam's really fast as well. Scizor has a really strong priority in Bullet Punch for outside of the Psychic terrain.
Right.
So I think maybe that very fast pressure could build things back up for them, and that might be something that they're looking to rely on.
Yeah, I think if they can clear certain Mons from the opponent's team, then yeah, absolutely. I believe that Hawlucha and Slurpuff can have a really good time finishing off, 3 or 4 Mons if they have to. It's definitely a possibility. So when you're prepping for them, definitely don't let that go under your radar. What kind of rank do you think they're worthy of?
So because of all the amount of negative side of things, I have put them down in C-.
That's funny because that's exactly where I have them placed on my list as well.
Yeah, I think there is again, with some of the others, a couple of changes and they could easily move up.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if they do, like we said, this does not take into account coaches' skill, ability to prep, all that good stuff. So I mean, there's no doubt. I know Steve. There's a good possibility they'll win at least a handful of games in this league. So no hate, but I do think that there could be a little more synergy and just seeing some more cores defensively and seeing some more hazard setters and removers would probably really bump this team up quite a bit. And we have our final team here now, which is going to be the Miami Magby. And it looks like they took your Mega Gardevoir that you were anticipating taking.
Yeah. So on paper, this is pretty much on paper the team I would probably have taken or close to it if it was just singles, solo drafting. Mm-hmm. This is very close to what I would personally draft. So I do like this team on a personal level, but there is other little bits I'm just I'm not sure about.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Ditto in Tier 3 is a really nice pick. That's definitely something that is positive about this. Xerxatry, just a really nice mon in general. Kyurem, obviously amazing. I think the first 3 were Mega Guard, Kyurem, Lando T, and I think that's a really strong trio out the gates. But when we move further down and look at the redundancy between things like Ambipom and Kangaskhan, Shedinja, which in singles it has its place, but man, it's gonna just die to a Stealth Rock or die to a Spike, which is unfortunate, or any kind of status. Bisharp, a really great Pokemon as well, can set the rocks, gets the Defiant for coming into defogs and setting off those sucker punches. Orbeetle is going to be able to set the webs. It's actually a decent speed tier, so it can get those webs or screens up. You turn out of there. Body press. It does get some good setup. So, yeah, I think there's a little redundancy on this team as well. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what I've said, is a lot of the lower tiers are very in redundant sort of positions. Like the Shedinja sort of thing, you have to build around that. Ambipom, I think Ambipom and Kangaskhan are both going to kind of do similar sort of things in there with Fake Out and other little moves like that. They're both going to do very similar things, so I think having both is kind of a bit redundant there as well. Klefki, I'm not 100% sold on Klefki.
Yeah, same. Klefki's an issue, I think, as well.
But yeah, I think Orbeetle's an absolute steal in the tier it's in, for what it is, and I love it for the ranking it is and the amount of points that you've got to spend for it. I think it's very worth pick.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is definitely a little underrated. But yeah, when you look at things like Shedinja, that could basically just be taken off the team and replaced by something else. Ambipom is going to be like Kangaskhan, faster, a little harder hitting. Kangaskhan going to be a little bit more bulky, but fulfilling similar roles. In terms of their hazard, I mean, That's the thing about Klefki is as much as I don't even like it on this team, like it does have the ability to defog and set hazards, which is nice. Yeah, I don't know. Otherwise, their hazard control is pretty lacking. Let's see.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't even know what else to say. Honestly, I think that.
Yeah, I'm literally looking to see if there is anything else there. But I'm struggling to find any. I mean, they've got some hard hitters, like you said, with those first 3 picks, and I think that those first 3 picks made them really scary, and then it just kind of slowly went downhill.
Yeah. I'm interested to see what kind of strategy they go with week in, week out. I could see them setting webs a lot. I think webs actually will be pretty beneficial for this team if they have the ability to keep them up. So perhaps Biosharp playing a big role in that, coming in when potential defoggers are on the field. The thing is, they don't really have much of a spin blocker besides Shedinja, so if you got a spinner, that's probably something you might want to bring against them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is one of the rare instances where spin is better than defog just because of Biosharp in there.
Mm-hmm. It's so scary. You can't you can't overstate how important it is not to let that thing get its Defiant off, because Sucker Punch is coming off of a boosted attack on that thing is just unbelievably scary. Yeah. What did you have them in terms of your tiers?
So I actually had them down in the C- as well.
Did you? Yeah. I actually had them down in D, and I'm not sure if maybe looking back on it that's being a little too harsh, because they do have some really great offensive weapons, I'll admit. But I think almost every team does, to be honest, and if anyone's kind of deserving of a D tier based on their, bottom 6 picks, it would probably be this one, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I can definitely...
It'd be this one or Sleeping Snorlax, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I can agree with you and drop these down into D, because like I said, they started off so strong and then they just went downhill.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. They do have the tools they need to win some games, so hopefully they are able to pull out a few of those wins. Looking up and down this tier list, we've got Apache and the Trichome Esta, as well as Team Sad up in the S tier. We've got Kalos Kings, your team, as well as my team, the Admins. Utah Dracofish and the Mimoswines up in the A tier. Ultimate Lucky Yang and the Mahogany Mamoswines are in the B tier. And then C+ is pretty packed with PSC, Johnny Sinzors, Northwinds River, and Ascending Cinder Knight Gods. And then we're looking at Provo Mudkips down in C-, along with the Sleeping Snorlax and Montreal unit. And then last but not least, well, actually I guess it is least, unfortunately, the Miami Magby. Now, looking at all these, is there anything that you would consider rearranging?
I think the only ones you would consider start moving is when you start factoring in the skill level of some of the players who are coaching those teams. Because I think there's definitely some of the teams, when you look at the lower tiers, who have some really strong coaches, and they could definitely take some W's from teams that are set up in A and B.
So let's just instead of moving them around, I guess, give me one kind of black horse that you think, based on the coach's capabilities, could really rise up in these rankings.
Provo.
That's right.
Provo.
I'm so not surprised you said that. That would have been my number one go-to as well.
Yeah, funny. I mean, definitely. Like, my record against them alone, like, I think they could definitely come and take a W from us, because I don't think I've actually beaten them in draft.
Yeah, I have, but I mean, they've beaten me too, I know. So he's definitely a really good coach. I could see him making use of that really scary Manaphy, Sceptile core. Zeraora. Why did I even forget to mention Zeraora? It's an absolute monster. So yeah, I think that would be the one I would move up as well. If there were going to be another one, it would maybe be actually Forester and the Mahogany Mamoswines from B to A, potentially. So I'd say keep on the lookout for both those teams. They will definitely be bringing some very entertaining battles, I'm sure.
Yeah, for real. Definitely.
Well, man, it's been... I want to apologize to everyone for the technical difficulties we've had with this, but I really hope you did enjoy our power rankings. And I really appreciate you coming on the channel, Scott. This was really awesome having you on, man.
Yeah, man, it's been good to come on after watching you for the last few years.
I can't believe we've never really done it before. So yeah, definitely cool to have your insights. I'm excited to have you back in this draft. It's been too long since we had a season of DLC, and I think there's going to be some really cool rivalries going on. So, anyhow, any last words you want to say? Are you still working on getting your channel back up, or what's going on with that?
Yeah, I'm looking to kind of reboot it. So I'm gonna start with week 1 and maybe a bit of a league breakdown, a team breakdown. In the next, I think I'm gonna be recording that tomorrow. I'm just helping Joe, who's one of the other coaches in my team. He's prepping for week 1, so helping him get that finished before I get everything recorded and up.
Yeah, nice. You don't want to give anything away before you even play week 1. So.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm probably not even going to upload it. I'm going to upload like a week late as well, just to make sure.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. Good idea. Good plan. All right, man. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on. Thanks, everyone, for watching. I hope you really enjoyed these power rankings. And until the next video, this has been Steven the Poke Technician, and I am signing off. Peace out.